In May of 2004, the Canadian band Sum 41 found themselves trapped in the middle of a horrific civil war in Central Africa. This has been a topic that's been requested by a lot of people, and if you guys want to see me cover certain topics, use the link in the description box below. Let's get to it. Sum 41 was coming off the success of their first two studio albums, 2001's All Killer No Filler and the following year's Does This Look Infected. The band would spend 2003 and 2004 working on their third record, and it was announced in March of 2004 that Sum 41 would be taking a break from recording, having finished the drum tracks, and head to Africa. MTV News would report at the time, and I quote, "From the front lines produced by the Canadian charity War Child will detail Sum 41's two-week trip to the Congo, where they will examine human rights, the history of the conflict, poverty, and the role of child soldiers, some of which were forcibly enlisted, as well as interview children for their perspective on the issues that they face." The idea for the project was actually Sum 41's, who then contacted War Child to collaborate. It's important to note that the MTV News article from March of 2004 also reported that the original documentary was supposed to only spend a third of the time in the Congo, with two other unnamed African countries also being highlighted. In May of 2004, Sum 41 would touch down in the Democratic Republic of Congo, and Congo by this point had been engaged in an 8-year-long civil war that had its roots from the 1994 conflict in Rwanda. By this point in time, the conflict had claimed the lives of over 3 million people. While the United Nations had deployed peacekeepers to the region, they were enforcing a pretty shaky peace treaty that had been signed by the warring factions. Joining Sum 41 and their manager on their trip to the Congo included director Adrian Callender and two doctors who had served in war zones previously, including Eric Hoskins and Samantha Nutt. The party would land in a town named Bukavu, which was near the Rwandan border. The town at this point in time was relatively peaceful, but despite that, the band had still been warned that there might be sporadic gunfire. Dr. Samantha Nutt, who is the executive producer on the project, told Blunt Magazine, "My job was really to brief them and to provide them with information and to answer their questions, and also to make sure to steward some of the interviews, to make sure that everything was being handled in a sensitive and appropriate way. I explained to them that we weren't interested in doing the kind of typical celebrity goes to a different part of the world, uses that celebrity to draw attention. We said to them, what our vision is for this is you go, you're functioning effectively as journalists, you're educating your audience back home, you have to be smart and articulate on the issues, and it's not about your vague emotional experience, we're not interested in that." Upon first landing in the country, the band would drive through the town of Bukavu, which had a sign that read, "Welcome to Bukavu, tourist capital of Congo," with the sign having a few bullet holes in it. It would eerily foreshadow what was about to happen. It was on day one that the members met the United Nations staff and learned more about the conflict. By day 3, the band would hike through the jungle to visit guerrillas, forgotten victims of the conflict, and poaching. It's the same day they also met a businessman named Aladdin, who they referred to as the best-dressed guy in Congo. Aladdin would make his money selling a mineral named coltan, which is used in everyday electronic devices. The mineral would also serve as a source of funding for many of the country's warring groups. The band would also learn that many times kids are often used to help mine the minerals. On their 4th day, they would go to a therapy center for abuse survivors of war and former child soldiers. The center teaches kids life skills and helps them heal with music. By the end of the week, they would go to an orphanage that houses girls who had been left by their families. Families in Congo who are sometimes hit with bad luck will blame their daughters, accusing them of being witches. It was at the end of the 6th day on May 26, 2004, around midnight, that fighting would erupt outside the band's hotel between government soldiers and rebels loyal to a renegade commander. Soon enough, bullets, mortars, grenades, and rocket-propelled grenades would be going off near the group's hotel, and the whole thing would be captured as part of the documentary. Frontman Derek Whibley would tell MTV News, "Bullets were coming through the windows and everyone was just lying on the ground with their hands on their heads. One bomb came too close, hit the hotel, and the hotel just started shaking. Everyone dove and was lying on the ground. Things were falling off the walls, mirrors were breaking. That's when we all realized that this was really going bad and we're probably not going to make it out. People were crying and everyone's hugging each other, basically saying goodbye." A United Nations peacekeeper named Chuck Peltier, who's staying at the same hotel as the band, would instruct its guests to lay down until the fighting stopped. During the battle, the band promised Chuck that if he got them out of the Congo alive, they'd name their third album after him. Armed with just a bat, Chuck would call for backup, and soon enough armored personnel carriers arrived to escort the hotel guests out of the hostile area into safety. But it wasn't an easy exit for the band and the other hotel guests, as they had to run from the hotel lobby into the street where the gunfire was happening to reach the armored personnel carriers in 4 groups of 10. Whibley would tell MTV, "Suddenly the tanks showed up and we all ran out. It was about 100 feet from the door of the hotel to the tanks, and we had to cross the street where all the fighting had been happening. And that's when it got really scary. That was the scariest moment for me, running from the door to the tank thinking we're going to be fired upon." The band members and hotel guests would be transported to a United Nations base nearby, and it would be the next day they flew out to Uganda and ultimately returned to Toronto. Luckily for the band and their party, no one was injured in the battle. It was around the time that Sum 41 was evacuated out of the country that violence would spike in Bukavu, with the New York Times reporting that at least 45 people were killed around the town, including a United Nations peacekeeper. Then on August 19, 2004, Billboard magazine would report that Sum 41 would have a release date and a name for their forthcoming 3rd studio album, which was simply titled Chuck. The album would be released via Island Records in October of 2004 and included radio singles We're All to Blame, Pieces, and Some Say. The lyrics on the album would be influenced by the band's experience in the Congo, and the album would prove to be a big success, going platinum in America and Canada and moving several million copies worldwide. The documentary the band filmed titled Rocked, Sum 41 in Congo would be released the following year in 2005. Sadly, the conflict in the Congo still rages to this day. Derek Whibley would look back at the experience saying, "The irony of the whole story is that we went to the Congo to shoot a documentary on the subject of war, and in the end we became the subject of war." That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. We'll see you again in Rock and Roll True Stories. Take care.